Okay, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Matthew Sabatella, and I'm on the board of directors of SERFA. And thank you so much for joining us at this SERFA session. This is a series of webinars that SERFA hosts on the third Thursday of every month. So you can mark your calendar right now to come back every month at this time. SERFA stands for Southeast Regional Folk Alliance. I'm sure we have a lot of members here, but these sessions are open to non-members. So if you don't know who we are, SERFA is the Southeast Regional Chapter of Folk Alliance International. And we're a nonprofit whose goal is to provide opportunities for our members to network locally and to advance the overall mission of Folk Alliance International, which is to serve, strengthen, and engage the global folk music community through preservation, presentation, and promotion. So I definitely encourage you, if you're not a member of Folk Alliance International, you can join at folk.org. That's quite a domain they got there, but they're folk.org. We are serfa.org. And the way it works is by joining Folk Alliance International, you're automatically a member of whichever region you live in. So if you live in the Southeast, you'll be in SERFA. But all the regions work together, and by joining Folk Alliance International, you can usually participate in just about all the events that all the regions host. So that is that. I encourage you to go to serfa.org and join our Google group to join the conversation with other Folk Alliance and SERFA members. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Dale Farmer. Really thrilled to have him here. I saw his movie and loved The Mountain Miner, so I was really glad to have him join us for this session. Dale grew up absorbing the stories and mountain music traditions of his grandparents, all of whom were Depression-era Appalachian musicians and ballad singers from Eastern Kentucky. He embraces his Appalachian heritage, playing in both old-time and bluegrass bands in the greater Cincinnati area. He retired from the Ohio EPA in 2018 and now works full-time as a filmmaker with Alt 452 Productions, a film company dedicated to bringing Appalachian stories to life. So I'm going to hand it over to Dale now. Dale, thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you, Matthew. It's a real pleasure to be here with you today. I've had the opportunity to talk with many groups about our film and so forth, but never when I couldn't see them. So this is a new experience. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. And I wish I could see your faces, but maybe next time when we all go to the SERFA conference together. So what I wanted to do today was just have a fun look back at a very conflicted history of Appalachian music and TV and narrative film. A few productions that exposed new audiences to our music and inspired countless new musicians to pursue Appalachian music in the process. But sometimes these same features that inspired people also perpetuated some negative Appalachian stereotypes in the process. And so we just wanted to talk about that conflict. I'm not an academic. I'm not an expert in the subject. I've only have my experiences to talk from. I know a lot of you out there can probably tell me the date and the time and the location and the musicians and what instruments they used and maybe even what they had for breakfast the day that these recordings were made, but my brain doesn't work like that. I don't really retain that kind of information, but I do have my experiences as a bluegrass and old time musician from the 1960s till now. And so many musicians have followed the same path I have and had the same inspirations and influences. And I'd love to hear from you and also from the younger musicians. I'd really like to know what they think of some of these older shows and movies. I really haven't had a chance to talk with folks about that. It all started for me when I was a kid back in the 60s. I loved watching TV shows come on. My bedtime was 9 o'clock So I didn't get to watch Bonanza, but my parents would let me stay up long enough to watch that fire burn through the map of the Ponderosa. I couldn't stay up to watch Gomer Pyle, but they would let me watch the opening when Gomer would march out a step with that goofy look on his face, and it made me laugh as a kid. My favorite show, though, was the Beverly Hillbillies. I loved watching the opening with the slow banjo music and Jerry Scoggins singing the story that told, or the song that told the story of the Clampetts. And when they would leave the hills, the banjo takes off in this breakdown, and it would just make my heart race and be anxious to see their weekly adventure to come. So Matthew, if you want to show the first clip, we'll take a look at that one now.
Come and listen to my story about a man named Jed, a poor mountaineer, barely kept his family fed. And then one day he was shooting at some food, and up through the ground come a bubbling crude oil, that is black gold, Texas tea. Well, the first thing you know, old Jed's a millionaire. The kinfolk said, Jed, move away from there. Said, California is the place you ought to be. So they loaded up the truck and they moved to Beverly Hills, that is swimming pools, movie stars. The Beverly Hillbillies.
So I wish I could see you and ask how many remember this, and see your hands raised and see what the age of the participants are here.
They can put it in the chat. I don't know if you have your chat window open. And also, please do use the chat or the Q&A function for questions, and we'll try to get to some questions at least at the end. But yeah, if you can't see the chat, Dale, don't worry about it. Might read some off to you if anything interesting comes up.
That would be preferable. Thanks, Matthew. So in addition to this historic theme song, the show also featured guest appearances from some musicians. Roy Clark appeared as Cousin Roy. His character was really a lot of fun to watch. And they also featured Flatt and Scruggs playing themselves. And what I liked about Flatt and Scruggs was that they had become wise to the city ways, and they wore suits and Stetson hats, and they were amused at the Clampetts as the family was fish out of water. They retained their mountain ways. They misinterpreted innovation and modern conveniences. It was a mix of innocence and ignorance. And I really liked how it showed Flatt and Scruggs as being wise to that. And also, of course, all the music that they would play. There were some goofy things, you know, Granny, she made lye soap out of a big pot there in their mansion. And she had lots of, she did her doctoring and had cures, or had a possum on the stove at any time. And they really made a lot out of Jethro's 6th grade education, and how he was so intelligent and smart from that education, and then he would do just crazy things. The 1960s, when this movie came out, or when the show was showing, was toward the end of the Appalachian migration of the 20s through the 60s, and there was a great mixing of cultures in the Midwest, another part of the country. There was still a lot of distrust and misunderstanding between the cultures, as Appalachians were populating factories and neighborhoods, and there was a lot of prejudice, and Appalachians were taught to hide their background and lose their accents and not let people know that they were from Appalachia. It was not advantageous for them to do so. And so during this time, for a show like the Hillbillies to come out was kind of timely, I guess. People watched it for different reasons. My grandparents, they were all from the mountains of Kentucky, and they actually loved watching the Hillbillies. they weren't really all that sensitive, even though they had experienced mistreatment from the Northerners. They were very proud of their Appalachian heritage, but I think they saw enough of the truth in the exaggerated comedy to find it funny and identify and even laugh at themselves in some cases. It's the same with the show Hee Haw, which showed Appalachians in stereotypical fashion in a lot of cases. And they also loved Hee Haw, and they watched it every Saturday night. And I was with them almost every weekend watching it with them. And so now if we move on to the Andy Griffith show, Andy Griffith is one of the most beloved shows of all time. It's been on syndication. I bet since it went off the air, you've been able to watch it in syndication. It's on, I could probably go down and turn it on right now. It's on cable somewhere. My mom told me that when the show first came on in October of 1960, she called my dad long distance. He was in the Navy in Memphis to tell him all about this show. And I was 7 months old at the time. The setting is Mayberry, North Carolina, modeled after Andy Griffith's hometown of Mount Airy. And being a sitcom, it's a mix of the wise and the foolish. It's more about this ideal hometown, small town, than it is about Appalachia. And it's that ideal life that many of us have wished for. And it portrays people in this small Appalachian town, mostly in a positive way, but then there's the rural characters that often do fit the stereotypes. The show generally makes light of their Appalachian ways, but it usually redeems them through music. And there was the character Rafe Hollister. He's the singing farmer. There's the one episode where they need a singer for this dignitary who's coming into town, and Rafe gets the part, and the townspeople are all upset because he's a hillbilly, and they try to teach him to act right and wear a suit, and he just can't do it. And he comes out on stage in his bib overalls and sings, and it just blows the dignitary away to the amazement of the townsfolk. And I really like that. But what I loved the most was when the Darlings would come to town. The Darlings were this backwards, superstitious mountain family with strange ways, but their strangeness was balanced out by their music, and their music was a mystery to me. Even as a small child, I couldn't get enough of it. And it's the actors are the Dillards, as I'm sure you all know. And Matthew, if you want to play this next clip now.
A time for love and laughter. The days will pass like summer storms. The winter wind will follow after. But there is love, and love is warm. There is a time for us to wonder. When time is young, and so are we. The woods are greener over yonder. The path is new, the world is free. There is a time when leaves are falling, the woods are gray, the paths are old, the snow will come when geese are calling. We need a fire against the cold. There is a time for us to wonder. When time is young, and so are we. The woods are greener over yonder. The path is new, the world is free. Time for us to wonder. When time is young, and so are we. The woods are greener over yonder. The path is new, the world is free. The path is new, the world is free.
Yeah, this is my favorite song scene of all the Darlings episodes. I love how in every episode Andy interacts with the Darlings in some crazy situations they get into. They keep us in suspense. We don't know what they're going to do next. And he's always drawn into some complex situation that both he and the Darlings have to resolve. And it's a constant frustration for Andy to deal with. He can't help but like them, but at the same time dread them coming to town because he knows something is going to happen. And especially when they were accompanied by their character Ernest T. Bass. And but then all the craziness usually leads to a musical situation, and Andy gets to sit in and they relate over the music. That's where they find their common ground. And I'm sure a lot of you out there are musicians and you can relate to this also. My music circle here in the Cincinnati area, gosh, we have rich folks, poor folks, we have devout Christians, Jews, other religions. We have politically from the extreme left to the right, but when we're playing music, we all connect and those walls just break down and we feel like family. And that's a lot of what brings us all here today, I'm sure. I love this clip because you can see Andy looking through all that craziness and finding the depth that the Darlings have through their music. Music, it's pure in that minor key and up tempo. It's mysterious, it's beautiful, and it reflects the true hearts of the Darlings. And Andy realizes that and knows that it's the most important part of their relationship. And that's what I love so much about this scene. So I was 13 years old in 1973. Our bus driver, Mr. Dittmeyer, was a kind man, and he played rock and roll music for us on the bus. And one morning I got on the bus, I was in the 7th grade, and after one of the rock and roll songs ended, I heard this acoustic guitar playing the G chord and followed by a banjo playing the same chord. And then the guitar and the banjo start interacting and building suspense and getting a little faster. I was a little bored with it probably because I was a rock and roller then, but as it started to pick up, the music turned into this banjo frenzy of a breakdown, and my life was changed forever in that moment. I couldn't get enough. I listened to the radio a lot after that, trying to hear it again and again. An older friend of mine told me he had the soundtrack album to the album of the movie Deliverance, and he loaned it to me. And I listened to it over and over, every tune. I couldn't get enough. I still listen to it. It's on my iPod. I still love every song on it. Eric Weisberg, Marshall Brickman, and Clarence White, and a few others were playing all instrumentals, and they were Scruggs picking, melodic picking. And at the time, I had never really heard old time, and I thought this was, mountain music in its purest form, and probably a lot of other people did. The soundtrack was actually an album called New Dimensions in Banjo and Bluegrass. It was released 10 years earlier in 1963, but they just added dueling banjos to the album and rebranded it as the soundtrack to Deliverance. And eventually the movie made its way to TV, and I finally got to see that infamous dueling banjo scene. So Matthew, if you want to play this for us. So as far as authenticity, Ronnie Cox, the actor, he does play the guitar and he does a decent job of playing along to the soundtrack. The kid in the scene, Billy Redden, he's just randomly moving his fingers on the banjo, and the scene feels a little contrived overall now, looking back. But musically unfamiliar, it might have felt conceivable at the time, I don't know. At the time, of course, I was 13 and thought it was the greatest thing I'd ever seen. When we were doing film festivals, there was another film, a documentary on the festival circuit with us called Hillbilly. And it addresses some of these same issues of hillbilly culture and film and music. And they talk quite a bit about the kid, Billy Redden, and tell his story. If you're ever curious about that kid, that would be a good documentary to watch. One of the things that strikes me about this clip is Ned Beatty's reaction. Right before the clip starts, a little earlier in the scene, he looks at the boy with the banjo and says to John Voight, "Talk about your genetic deficiencies, ain't that a shame?" Then he's amused by the older man dancing, and he goes into this, what feels to me like a condescending hand clap and foot stomp and reaction. So, and after the song's over, Ronnie Cox's character offers to shake hands with the little boy, but the boy turns his head away real fast and does not want to interact. And I don't know, maybe it looks like he has autism or something similar, but unfortunately now you hear him often referred to as the inbred banjo kid. There's a perpetuation that incest might be common in an Appalachia after this. And the movie goes on with the film score being a lot of different variations of dueling banjos. Some of them sound really good, just setting the mood for different scenes. But I guess what's most disturbing to me about this whole movie was that infamous scene that has some forced sodomy between these two mountain men. The famous line that came from it, "Squeal pig." And then there's the toothless mountain man with holding the shotgun, who's about to force John Voight's character into performing oral sex and says he's got a pretty mouth. You still hear that quote from time to time. So the two dueling banjos and banjo music in general have been linked to what's become an ongoing joke to this day that makes humor of male on male rape. And how many times have you ventured onto a back road with friends and maybe be a little lost and somebody will say, "Oh, I think I hear banjo music," and then everyone laughs. Or you might hear someone say "squeal pig." There's t-shirts and bumper stickers that say "paddle faster, I hear banjo music." You see this from time to time. And I don't know, to me, it's just kind of disturbing. I watched this movie again last week to prepare this, and yeah, I was kind of disturbed by it, really. Every single encounter with Appalachian people in this film had a negative or a condescending slant. There's only one scene that's even remotely positive in the movie where John Voight and Ned Beatty are having dinner with a bunch of older people, but you know, one of the older people had a line to say, and they, you know, chose somebody who didn't have any teeth to say that line, and no false teeth. So I don't know, just kind of further led into that stereotype. So anyway, I was looking on Wiki, and they said Dueling Banjos won a Grammy in '74 for Best Instrumental Performance. The film was selected by New York Times as one of the best 1,000 movies ever made. There was a poll in the United Kingdom that voted this movie number 45 on the list of 100 greatest films. Every banjo player from that era knew how to play dueling banjos, and you rarely ever hear it anymore at a jam session or performance, in spite of many requests we still get. And partly it's because it was so overplayed, and partly because of that connection with the native association from the movie. I've seen people honor a request to play this tune before, and usually the person who requests it will go into that same Ned Beatty, hand clapping, foot stomping, dumb look on their face, or sometimes you might hear somebody say squeal pig or something like that. And so it's no wonder no one ever plays it anymore, even though it's a great song. It was originally called Feuding Banjos by Arthur Smith. I wonder how that tune would have evolved and been used today had it not been for its use in the movie Deliverance. I read somewhere that the producers of Deliverance actually found this movie this song hearing the Darlings played on the Andy Griffith show. So after I saw this movie back when I was a kid, I concluded two things. Number one, that I wanted to be a banjo player. And number two, that I would never venture into rural Appalachia alone. And I got to tell you, researching the Mountain Miner took me to a lot of places in Appalachia where we filmed and where I did research in Jackson County and Estill County, Kentucky. And I've met so many new friends and just great people from that area. And the travels and filming in North Carolina, and particularly Ashe County, Watauga County, and Jackson County, people are just great. And I just wonder how many people don't venture into those areas because of the impressions that they've gotten from watching movies and the media. I don't know. But there are just some wonderful people, wonderful places, nothing like what I saw in the movie Deliverance at all. So about that time, I was 13 years old, and one day I was rummaging through my grandpa's junk closet where he kept a lot of his auction finds, and I found an old K banjo. And I got it out and I tuned up only three strings on it, and I started playing melodies on it, kind of like a dulcimer. My grandpa heard me and told me to take it home, and if I learned to play it, he'd give it to me. So I put strings on it and bought the old Mel Bay banjo book, and I was on my way. And like every other banjo player from that time, the first three tunes I remember learning were Cripple Creek from Hee Haw, Dueling Banjos from Deliverance, and then the most requested bluegrass tune of all time, Foggy Mountain Breakdown. Matthew, if you want to play the next clip.
Good afternoon, this is the Barrel Gang. Now, if everybody will just take it easy, nobody will get hurt. Is that your money or the bank's?
Mine.
All right, you keep it then. Next time I'll aim a little lower. All right.
Take a good look, Pop. I'm Buck Barrel.
For the Barrel Boys! Happy birthday, hon! Hey, it was the Barrel Gang, Charlie. I think they was headed for Oklahoma.
the face of death. And all I can say is, they did right with me, and I'm bringing me a mess of flowers to their funeral.
Let's catch him anyway.
I ain't gonna risk my life in Oklahoma.
I've heard Foggy Mountain Breakdown probably thousands of times since then by amateurs and professionals. And to me, I've never heard a better version than that recording there. That was actually recorded in Cincinnati. I can't remember exactly what year that was, but I read somewhere where Earl Scruggs tried to get Lester Flatt to play the E minor chord, and Lester plays an E major chord over the E minor, other instruments playing out of the E minor, and it gives you that a real clash and a dissonance that just gives me the chills. I just love it. And so this movie came out in 1967. It took place in Kansas and Oklahoma. It didn't really perpetuate any Appalachian stereotypes that I could see, but it did use Appalachian music to glorify bank robbery and win empathy for the murderous criminals that in real life rain terror on the banks and common people. And at the time of this clip, we find ourselves rooting for the Barrow Gang to get away, partly because of the music. And they're having fun and they're laughing and just having a good old time as people are shooting for them and they're running for their lives. And in real life, Bonnie and Clyde are thought to have murdered 13 people, 9 police officers. The real Bonnie and Clyde were not folk heroes in their time. They were feared and struck terror in the general population, from what I've read. The making of the movie is a feature on the DVD that I watched the other day. And it was pretty interesting hearing Warren Beatty and the director Arthur Penn talk about making this movie. And they mentioned the anti-authority sentiment of the Vietnam War, which was taking place at the time this movie came out, and how that may have had something to do with also winning empathy for the criminals. And so Foggy Mountain Breakdown, it just made the car chase fun and it glorified their criminal getaway. And this was a big departure from most chase scenes. A year later, the movie Bullet came out, and what's many will say is the greatest chase scene of all time. Steve McQueen in his fastback Mustang and the Dodge Challenger. And that chase scene had no music. All you heard was squealing brakes and tires and crashing against guardrails and so forth. And that added a whole different kind of suspense and feel to it. So Foggy Mountain Breakdown, I think, was a brilliant choice for achieving audience empathy. And the way it starts and stops with those little interview snippets really keeps the audience engaged and it boosts the emotion. And I wonder what the commercial success of Bonnie and Clyde, the movie, would have even been without Foggy Mountain Breakdown. I watched the scene this morning again with the sound turned down just to see what I thought of it. And it was actually a pretty ho-hum chase scene. So exposure to Foggy Mountain Breakdown from seeing this movie has undoubtedly inspired millions of people, or multitudes of people, to seek out this music for the first time. It's probably caused a lot of people to migrate from other genres to bluegrass and folk music. And I don't think the impact of Foggy Mountain Breakdown can be overstated. There's a book that came out in 2019 called Earl Scruggs and Foggy Mountain Breakdown by Thomas Goldsmith. And I understand, I haven't read it yet. I would like to. He talks a lot about the influence of the song. Okay, Matthew, if you would like to play the next clip.
Was in the merry month of May, when all gay flowers were blooming, sweet William on his deathbed lay, for the love of Barbary Allen.
Hey, ladies, where did you learn that song?
My granny gave it to me.
What on earth are you doing in such a dreadful place?
A great discovery. Old English ballads. And I am going to be the first to publish them now. Nice enough. My intention is to exalt the fine music of these mountains. It means to lift up.
You mean exploit. It means to steal. First it was the coal and lumber companies coming in here, now they want to take our music too.
The only way to preserve our way of life up here is to keep your way of life down there.
The ballads are precious musical legacy. No one knows that these songs are being sung right here in the mountains of America. I believe that you can win public sentiment over with your music.
We're not really interested in what you people out there think about us.
Lily!
I'm not risking life and limb.
Please come with us.
Don't butt in where you don't belong. I have never been anywhere where the music is as much a part of life as it is here. It's beautiful. Come with me.
I'm a jinx for a woman, Millie.
I'm not your average woman.
When I first come to this country in 1849, I saw many fair lovers.
You made most of us feel real proud.
I viewed it all.
I have never heard such singing.
Stranger and a long way from home.
So you get a good synopsis of the story and a sampling of the music just from watching the trailer. And this film was directed by Maggie Greenwald, and it was loosely based on Olive Dame Campbell, the founder of the John C. Campbell Folk School, and the English folk song collector Cecil Sharp. I think it shows Appalachians in, what I assume is accurate for the time and in a positive way. There were certain characters that played antagonistic roles, and that's to be understood. It's a drama. But overall, I thought the portrayal was really good. It reflects a lot on the struggles and the hard way of life in the 1930s or 20s, whenever this took place. And the struggle with the local coal companies and the challenges of education and just getting by. And it showed how music was so ingrained in their lives. The protagonist was impressed when she stated that the people lived and breathed the music. And I looked at a lot of online reviews. They were mostly favorable. I think that this had the most positive following among Appalachians and musicians that I could see. And I think the producers made a great effort for authenticity. They used a mix of actors that were musicians and actual musicians in the film. I remember when I first watched it, I heard the child Emily Rossum when she starts to sing Barbara Allen. I thought, wow, she sounds like Sheila K. Adams. And then in the credits, I saw that Sheila had also had done consulting for the singing, and she also played in the square dance scene along with Josh Goforth. And I'm not sure if I'm saying his name right, Don Petty. I've not had the pleasure of meeting him, but it was nice to see him in the movie. And there was some authentic flatfoot dancing, which I thought was great. It was, from what I understood, it was some of the green grass cloggers providing some of that footwork for the scene. And Pat Carroll was an actor in the movie, and I thought she did a great job singing I Wish I Was a Single Girl Again. And I even had to check to see if she was Appalachian or not, because I thought she played her part so well, and she was not. She was from Louisiana and lived her whole life in California. There was a really nice Conversations with Death by Hazel Dickens and Bobby McMillan, and even the actor David Patrick Kelly did a really good job singing his part of that song. I guess my biggest disappointment was in the film credits, because I really like watching the credits to see who did what musically, and all they had was a list of the songs. They didn't really list who was doing them or anything. So that was kind of a disappointment. So I had to do a lot of searching online to find out who did what. This was filmed not too far from where we filmed The Mountain Miner, and Walton Conway, who owns the property where we filmed The Mountain Miner, told me that Songcatcher was actually, some of it was filmed on his mother's farm. And so that was kind of a neat connection. So I watched this film also again last week. I really liked it. Now, I want to talk a little bit about Cold Mountain. I watched Cold Mountain also again last week, and because I remembered that music was a big part of the story, and it was played by, there was music played by musician characters. And I remembered that I thought the music in the film was really good, but I didn't think it was all that authentic for the time period it represented. When I watched it this time, I was impressed by the actor Brendan Gleeson, who plays the fiddle in the movie. I noticed that his fingers were actually matching what I was hearing, and that was good. And I looked him up and found out he's actually an Irish fiddler from Ireland, and he has some videos online. And in the credits, I saw that he actually played one of the songs in the film, and the rest of the time he and the banjo player were syncing to Stuart Duncan and Dirk Powell, who were just wonderful musicians. Other musicians credited were Riley Bogus, Norman Nancy Blake, Mike Compton, Edgar Meyer, Tim O'Brien, Alison Krauss. There was a nice church scene that included some really good Sacred Harp singing. If you want to play the next clip, Matthew.
Sure. And as I do that, just a little check in on time. It's 3:45 right now. So you still have 15 minutes. In case,
I'm going to have to do something that I'm not really good at, and that's talk fast. Well, tell you what, Matthew, can we pause this clip? If you can skip to the next one, we'll take this one out because it wasn't. Yeah, you can fast forward to it. It was really nice. I had Jack White singing Wayfaring Stranger, and we were just going to talk about authenticity, and that it was really good. I wanted to talk about how us filmmakers, we have to balance art and craft and commerce, and they actually invested $79 million in Cold Mountain. And I got my calculator out. That was 527 times my budget for The Mountain Miner. And, their object of the producers was to fill theater seats and sell DVDs and soundtrack. And so I think they did a good job of balancing authenticity with modern day music sensibilities. So, I don't want to criticize them for not being authentic, but at the same time, there's just that balance that I just wanted to mention when we're doing something like that. So we'll go on to the next clip, Matthew. Yeah.
Sorrow. degrading.
All right, Matthew, you can stop it there. Yeah, it kind of goes on from there. So I think undoubtedly more than any narrative film since the Deliverance and Bonnie and Clyde to expose traditional music to a popular audience, O Brother, Where Art Thou has really made the biggest impact. I was watching the IBMA Awards this week, and Joe Newberry paid tribute to this film on its 20th anniversary, saying that it had influenced millions of people. I read several articles recently about this movie, and it talked about how since this movie, traditional music venues have gotten much busier. Acoustic music sales have gone up, record sales. Many new musicians have been inspired to form folk related bands. The bands in the movie had spikes in their audiences, and Dan Tominski went from being a sideman in Alison Krauss's band to practically a household name, and has just achieved great success as a solo artist also. My band still gets lots of requests to do Man of Constant Sorrow. And the movie was a lot of fun to watch again for the 6th time last week. This clip, the characters are disguised with beards. You might say they're dressed as hillbillies, and they're running from the KKK after foiling their attempts to hang their African-American Black friend. And they're masquerading as hillbillies to get in, as the band, hillbilly band, to get into this hall. And what was humorous was earlier in the movie, they had recorded Man of Constant Sorrow to get some extra money and didn't realize that the song had become a big hit and people were seeking them out. As far as the authenticity, there's a very modern bluegrass ensemble, the best in the business, playing a very polished Man of Constant Sorrow. But this is fiction and it's comedy, and I think there's a whole different kind of suspension of disbelief when it comes to a lighthearted movie like this. So I really don't hold them to quite the same standards as I would as somebody being serious about the music or having the music as the actual subject. I put some feelers out a while back asking people for insights on these films, and I did get some criticism from people talking about how this music wasn't all that authentic for the time. But filmmakers, we put music in to tell the audience how to feel and for effect. And the Coen brothers used a lot of coloring techniques, and they used a lot of bluesy music to take us back to the dusty times of the Depression era, and just some great music. Chris Thomas King does some blues stuff. James Carter does "Oh Lazarus" as the Prisoner Chain Gang, and we have Harry McClintock's Big Rock Candy Mountain. T-Bone Burnett, I thought, just did an outstanding job of putting this together, even with some of the criticism. So from that time that I found that old banjo in my grandpa's closet, he and I had something in common. We had the music, and for many years, he told me stories of growing up in the mountains and how his fiddle playing sustained him through a lot of very hard times. And he often told me, he said, "I love that bluegrass you played, Dale, but I love the old hillbilly music the best." And my grandparents' music has been one of the big influences of my life. It's kind of made me who I am today. And like many of you, I'm sure the music's led me all over the country. It's enabled me to meet thousands of people, make many new friends. It's enabled me to touch lives and entertain. And it takes me to a spiritual place where I can connect with those who have gone before me, and I can connect with the creator of all music in a spiritual way, and find a place with God that I can't find any other way. It's led me to this Zoom meeting today with all of you, and I can draw a straight line back to my grandpa sitting on that front porch in the mountains of Jackson County, Kentucky, playing those tunes and not having any idea where they would lead to this day. And I was influenced in some way, positive and negatively, by all the productions I've shown you today. They're all a part of my musical story, good and bad, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. Two things I wanted to accomplish more than anything with the Mountain Miner was I wanted to portray the Appalachians as I had known them to be, just hardworking, good, moral people who made a difference in society, and to portray the music as authentically as I could. And I wanted the audience to feel like they were right there experiencing it with the characters. And in the balance of art and craft and commerce, we put art first. We used all musicians in the roles instead of actors. And, you know, I've really hesitated from judging, criticizing other filmmakers. You know, we had our share of criticism too, mostly because, you know, we didn't use actors, and that I did intentionally use a very slow pace for the movie. I studied directing and writing for a long time. And I know that Americans, we like that next scene. We want to get to the next scene, to the next line. We want to keep it moving, keep it moving. But I wanted the audience to feel that slow pace. I wanted them to feel that porch and the monotony and how the music would break that. And so we left a slow pace in, and I've gotten some criticism for it, but I don't care. I'm glad I did it. So if you'll indulge me with one more clip, this is from The Mountain Miner. The character Vess is actually based on me. The scene depicts one of the many talks that I had with my grandpa and how I loved working with him on the farm.
Listen to that. That's the prettiest music ever was.
Sounds nice.
You know what I like? Being out here in the dead of winter, listening to it snow. It's so quiet. You can hear a twig break a mile off. Sometimes that's the best part of the music too. That's that quiet space in between the notes.
See, that's what I came down here for. I enjoyed helping you out today, but I wish we could have spent some more time learning that old sound.
Well, Pap always said these tunes would take you to that old place. You know something, Vess? You've been up to your elbows in the old place all day.
Hold on. All right, try it again. Oh. All right, try it now.
Now that's some music for you. Hey, close that thing, hop in.
So when I, just in closing here, when I came up with the idea for this presentation, I thought I had a clear direction where I wanted to go, but as I watched all these movies again, I guess I kind of changed my mind in some places. And I wonder if some of these old films are still relevant, if I would recommend them to anybody. I guess some I would, some I wouldn't, I don't know. I didn't have time to do Coal Miner's Daughter, which was another great narrative film. And my favorite was The Long Riders, with Ry Cooder doing the score. And that was just a good one. And I didn't get to talk about that. But narrative film just has a different kind of emotional power than documentaries. It just has a different place. And my goal as a filmmaker is to produce narrative films to celebrate Appalachian culture and to promote the music. And if you've not seen The Mountain Miner, and if you'd like to, it's free on Amazon Prime, and worldwide it's on video on demand, and DVDs, Blu-rays, and the soundtrack are available through the website, themountainminermovie.com. And the soundtrack's on all digital platforms. And if you would like to contact me, I would love to hear from you. My email is dale@themountainminermovie.com. So I want to thank you, Matthew, and the Southeast Regional Folk Alliance, for inviting me to talk with you. It's been my honor and pleasure. And I hope to meet many of you at the next SERFA conference in person. So,
you have another minute for a question or two?
I have all the time you want.
All right, but thank you so much. This has been great. I just wanted to get to some of these because people have been putting questions in here. You already answered the movie being available. Someone is asking if you'll have plans to do any more films, and also the comment that she loved how the actors were musicians, how you chose to cast musicians instead of having actors fake the instruments.
Yeah, that was a big decision. And I kind of thought, these musicians of this old time music, we live kind of in a dream world anyway. We're always channeling these old people. And I think when we're on stage, sometimes we actually feel like we're on a back porch somewhere in the 1930s. So I didn't think it was a big reach for them to do acting, and they worked really hard. And I thought they really did a good job. And a lot of people, strangely enough, have told me they preferred that to real actors because they just seemed like real people and not like actors. So, it worked out really well. And your other question, is there others? Yeah, we have another movie all written and ready to go. We're trying to hook up with a producer right now. That's where we are in that process. So if you want to like us on Facebook, The Mountain Miner, will be talking more about that film as it progresses and develops.
Okay, thank you. Question about Foxfire. What do you think of Foxfire?
Foxfire, the books or the plant? I'm sorry, I'm sure you mean the books. I got all the Foxfire books when they first came out. It was back around the same time as I started playing music. And I read all of them cover to cover. I loved it. It just helped take me back to a place where I wanted to be. And I love those books. And I still get them out from time to time. And actually, I used them when I was researching for The Mountain Miner to try to get my sets right and so forth. So yeah, I would highly recommend them.
All right, nice. This is a complicated one. Is hillbilly a bad word? How do you view the use of that word?
Well, ask 10 different people and I think you'll get 10 different answers. There's some people are very offended by it if it's used by certain people. It's like a lot of things. If someone uses the word hillbilly, I can tell whether they mean it in a derogatory way, in a condescending way, in a humorous way, or in an endearing way. I can tell. And that's pretty much the way I take it. I use the word referring to myself as a hillbilly sometimes. I take so much pride in my Appalachian heritage. And my grandparents, they called themselves hillbilly with a laugh. My grandma she would say something just wise or brilliant. And then she would say, but what do I know? I'm just a dumb hillbilly. And then she would laugh, knowing that she had just put somebody in their place somewhere. So it's just all in how it's used and who's using it.
Yeah. All right. Further clarification. Apparently, it's a movie called Foxfire. I'm not.
Oh, I have not seen a movie
Yeah.
Foxfire.
I'm
Oh,
not
I'm sorry.
One last one, I think that's up here. Are there film festivals dedicated to Appalachian culture where, say, a songwriter could present original music for potential sync placement? I don't know if you know anything about the world of.
Yeah, I don't know of any that are particularly geared toward Appalachian music. I know I was involved with the Appalachian State University. There was a film festival there, and they have awards for Appalachian film, and that was a real good one. And they have a lot of music around that one, so I would probably focus on that. We were in the Queen City Film Festival in Cumberland, Maryland, and they had an Appalachian section of that festival also. And there are several other festivals in the Appalachian region that we did not get into. The Austin Film Festival and Nashville Film Festival are both geared toward music. So you could look at those.
All right. Okay, well, I think we're going to wrap it here. I want to thank you, Dale, so much for being here. This has been a very entertaining and enlightening program, I think. And thank you everyone for being here. Remember, please, if you're not a member of Folk Alliance International, please check folk.org and SERFA.org. And I forgot to mention, we are planning, well, we have monthly events like this. In May, we'll be doing a little bit more, a little bigger event for SERFA. So I hope you all stay with us. And thanks again, Dale. And
yeah, thanks. And I'm catching up on the chat comments now. Thanks everyone for commenting. I'll read all those. And again, if you'd like to contact me, feel free to give me an email. I love hearing from people. So.
All right. Bye-bye. Thank you.